Greetings and welcome back to room 303 in our chats with Emily as we are calling our readings through the poetry of Emily Dickinson. We turn now to poem 509 in the Johnson edition, If Anybody's Friend Be Dead. And we're back now to Emily's musings on death. Our assumptions that you've been following our stuff at learnstrong.net, down that left-hand side, Chats with Emily is our playlist. I'm hoping that you've worked through our set of introductory comments where we made a couple of observations about Emily's struggle with death and struggle with remembrance and the whole dance between those two things. I'm hopeful that you've worked through already our preceding 508 poems. We just finished with 508. I'm seated. I've stopped being theirs. In many ways, as we said, we're back to the challenge of remembering how to hold on, how to let go. And Emily is the great poet of woe or anguish, as we have said. And here, this is a powerful representative of it. By the way, just to remind, Emily mentions death or dying or some version of that in 135 of her poems. If anybody's friend be dead, it's sharpest of the theme, the thinking how they walked alive at such and such a time. Their costume of a Sunday, some manner of the hair, a prank nobody knew but them, lost in the sepulchre. How warm they were on such a day, how you almost feel the date so short way off it seems, and now they're centuries from that. How pleased they were at what you said. You try to touch the smile and dip your fingers in the frost. When was it? Can you tell? You asked the company to tea, acquaintance just a few, and chatted close with this grand thing that don't remember you. Past vows and invitations, past interview and vow, past what ourself can estimate that makes the quick of woe. Emily and her use of the word woe turning up in 24 poems. Now, the poem is fairly accessible. It's just kind of sad and tragic to read. When you lose somebody, you remember that somebody placed in time. If anybody's, notice it's a friend, be dead. It's sharpest of the theme. It's the hardest thing to lose a pal. The thinking how they, walked alive at such and such time, the way they dressed, a costume of a Sunday. It's interesting, the word costume. Almost as if they were putting on a performance. Some manner of the hair, how they wore the hair. Of course, we'll always remember that Emily had that beautiful auburn hair, we're told. A prank nobody knew but them. Lost in the sepulchre. We hear prank and nobody, and we can't help but think of Odysseus, of course, pranking so many different people, including, obviously, Polyphemus. Lost in the sepulchre, and I think this is the key word, lost, right? Along with the word almost to come. How, notice repetition here of how warm, how pleased, how warm they were on such a day. You almost feel the date. In other words, almost. You can almost grasp it. So short way off it seems, and now they're centuries from that. In other words, gone, long gone. Centuries from now, still gone. How pleased they were at what you said. You try to touch the smile. It's brilliant, Emily, right? You try to touch the smile. And dip your fingers in the frost. When was it? Can you tell? And notice there's no question mark here. It's like Emily's having this chat, this conversation with you, which explains why we call this series Chats with Emily. You asked the company to tea, acquaintance just a few, again, only a few maybe, close like this, and chatted close again. Of course, this is back to poem 45 and why we called our series Chats with Emily, with this grand thing that don't remember you. Of course, the don't here should be doesn't, or for grammatical purposes. That don't remember you. Or maybe she's saying the company doesn't remember, or all of the people don't remember you. Past, notice 3 of them. Past bows and invitations. By the way, you can read this as bows, you can read it as vows. It works either way, it's brilliant. Past interview and vow. Notice vow and woe, sight, possible sight rhyme. Past what ourself can estimate. In other words, even we ourselves don't understand completely. That dash makes the quick of woe, exclamation point. When we get to 1732, We'll come back to this poem. My life closed twice before its close. It yet remains to see if immortality unveil a third event to me, so huge, so hopeless to conceive as these that twice befell. Parting is all we know of heaven and all we need of hell. What are we going to do with a poem like this at 2A? I think it's obvious that it is hard to live past the death of a pal. At 2B, the repetitions are powerful in this poem. At 3A, I love that the scholar priest takes us to Pablo Neruda's poems, so many different lengths of time. Here, a more positive view of the memories of the dead. He says it this way, quote, "A man lives for as long as we carry him inside us, for as long as we carry the harvest of his dreams, for as long as we ourselves live holding memories in common. A man lives," end quote. Finally, in 3B, how have you dealt with the loss of a pal? And in what ways is Emily helping that to happen? I hope so. Thank you.